everyone. My name is Holly Foltz, and I am a senior CSM with LMN, Landscape Management Network. I would like to start by introducing our partner and colleague, Monica Muir. Monica is a QuickBooks solution provider and has worked with hundreds of LMN customers by helping them select the right version of QuickBooks to suit their business needs and by providing expert accounting advice through her consulting services. During our presentation, we will have opportunity for Q&A. Please ask your questions through the questions section found in the GoToWebinar meeting window. Please state whether the question is for LMN or QuickBooks. This webinar will be recorded and available on our website, golmn.com/webinars, where you can find upcoming and previously recorded webinars. I will start us off by highlighting benchmark metrics in LMN to help you monitor, estimate, and job profitability with Monica's presentation to follow. LMN uses your numbers to calculate benchmarks. In the budget, you will outline your costs of goods sold and overhead. The budget will compare your ratio against industry averages of profitable companies whose sales forecast and work breakdown percentages are similar to your company. These industry averages are to be used as a guideline and benchmark to compare your data against. On the top right corner of this screen, which is tab 10 of the budget, you find your budget revenue per man-hour. The revenue per man-hour is unique to your business based on the data you entered in the tabs prior and your company's unique unbillable percentage. When we refer to the revenue per man-hour on a job, it includes the total selling price, labor, materials, equipment, subs, overhead, and profit, divided by the total number of hours estimated. You will see in a few slides how this budget revenue per man-hour is used to analyze your profitability on an estimate. Once your operating budget has been activated, the next step is establishing your item catalog. The item catalog provides confidence and consistency with pricing. It enables your company to clearly identify your break-even price while factoring in additional costs, including a percentage of overhead recovery, prior to the profit markup. Every LMN estimate will provide a snapshot of your cost, break-even price, and profitability based on a summary of the items added to each work/service area in the estimate. From within the estimate, open the Analysis tab to find a cost and profit summary of your estimate. On the bottom right, LMN is comparing your budget revenue per man-hour against your estimate revenue per man-hour. Your estimate revenue per man-hour will vary by estimate and by type of work. Design, build, construction type jobs tend to drive a higher revenue per man-hour than service type jobs. It's important to keep an average, as the revenue per man-hour is a benchmark to achieve your sales goal. If you're always higher than your budget revenue per man-hour, you will achieve your sales goal faster, versus if you always fall below the budget revenue per man-hour. And we'll just pause for a few moments to see if we have any questions from the audience. Please ask your questions through the questions section found in the GoToWebinar meeting window and state whether the question is for Holly or for Monica. So I have a question from a user. Do you recommend updating your budget throughout the year? Thank you for your question. Great question. I would recommend that you review your LMN budget periodically throughout the year. So if you're going to do any updates to the budget, I would recommend that you make a copy. So you always have your original budget that you started your year off with, and then make a copy. Date the copy if you want to make any adjustments to it. You can see what those numbers will do and how they'll affect your profitability within your company-wide budget and when estimating. Displayed on this screenshot is LMN's job scoreboard. This scoreboard will compare your estimated versus actual hours at a job and at a task level. In addition to the project manager's view of the job progress via the scoreboard or LMN job progress reports, your foreman in the field will be prompted upon switching tasks or punching out with the progress update via the LMN Time app. Lastly, generate live data as it becomes available. LMN has numerous reports available to report on your crews while they are in the field. A few features to highlight is the daily review located under the timesheet tab, which will provide a live look at your crew's progress, pictures, notes, and services completed throughout the day. In addition, highlighted on this screenshot is our job history all details report, available via the job reports menu, which will showcase all job activity, report on service pricing, total hours, crew notes, estimated costs, weather notes, etc. And to report specifically on actual versus estimated hours at a job or at a task level, you can find this information in the Job Reports menu, report number 14. That concludes my presentation. At this time, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Monica Muir. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. I'm just amazed at all the different metrics that you can get for how the job is progressing along the line. So I think it's just an absolutely great tool for your customers and for my clients as well. But we're going to take a look at what you have in QuickBooks in terms of tools and metrics for better cash management. So we'll start off with getting money in and ways that we can speed up invoicing. We've all heard that cash is king, right? And when I spoke with my husband about who is CFO for a couple hospitals and retirement communities, he said if there's one thing that you want to monitor or two for cash flow management, I said, what was it? He says, accounts receivable. He said, if you don't have cash, you aren't going to do much else, right? Which I'm sure you've all heard, certainly have felt. So I would say if you have some type of review or approval process, look for a way that you can streamline that as much as possible. I know some are really good, but I actually had a client reach out to me last year, and they had three people touch the invoice before it went out the door. Actually, it was one person touched it twice, and each time along the way, they had to print out the invoice and pass it on to the next person. So it was definitely a slow process. So we found a way using the QuickBooks custom field so they could actually have and did a report so they could actually see what invoices they had to review, and then they could change the name and that passed on to the next person. So that became a lot simpler, and in all the different versions of QuickBooks, you can actually use custom fields. So if you're interested in that, let me know. We can give you maybe some best practices when you're using the custom field. Also, make it easy to track what is still to be invoiced, because many of you, you have maybe someone who's doing the books, maybe you have a few people who are involved in doing the books, but they don't necessarily know when it's ready to get another invoice out. Obviously, monthly maintenance, that's kind of a no-brainer, but it's the other ones, when is the next phase, when you need to get that invoice out, where is it, hasn't been sent. Those are all things that you want to find a way as much as possible to kind of smooth out that process, so that you don't have things just sitting around and the invoice hasn't gone out the door. Especially right now, when for many businesses, money's maybe a little bit slower, so you want to be sure you get those out. There are some reports that can help you monitor that. In the desktop, you have the job progress invoice versus estimate. You have unbilled costs, and in QuickBooks Online, you have unbilled time, and desktop, it's billed and unbilled hours. So you can certainly look at those reports. And then I actually have an article that I run every year. You can just go to my website, which is down here, and go to the blogs. But it's 8 ways to get your invoicing done quickly. I'm impatient, so I'm always looking at, how can we get these things out the door quickly, right? So you might want to take a look and see if you get some new ideas there. The desktop product has an income tracker. This is obviously designed for money coming into your business. So we can start off with what is unbilled. And what I like about the income tracker here is that they certainly dollarize it. So for your estimates, you can see a dollar amount that you haven't invoiced for yet, and same with your time and expenses. If you've never really cleaned up some of your estimates, you might find this runs a little high, but don't panic. But this is certainly a nice tool that you can take a look at. And here you can actually filter. So you could look just at estimates or just at invoices, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it. That's by type. You can narrow it down by customer. So if you've got a customer, you've done multiple jobs, you can narrow that down if you need. And then you can actually do a batch. You've got a few estimates, they're ready for the next invoice. You can do a batch that way, or you can actually go over here and just do it one at a time, and whichever works best given the specifics that you're looking at. You can also track what hasn't been paid. So more from a collection standpoint, you can sort by due date, you can sort by customer, whatever you want, however you want to take a look at it. Again, you have dollar amounts up here, so it's nice, it's color coded. And again, you can either do one at a time, you can go ahead and email it out to your customer, or if you've got a whole batch, and I know I've got clients that will do it this way, they'll do the invoices and they'll batch email them out to the customers. So whatever works well for you. So this is definitely one tool that you can use. If you are in QuickBooks Online, their income side probably isn't quite as robust, but you do see that you can certainly track, the money that you've got out and money that has come into your business and whether or not it's been deposited into your bank account. Starting with 2020, the desktop version actually finally allowed a way to do payment reminders. And all I could say was it was about time. This needed to be done a long time ago in my mind. And so, you can decide whether these are automatic reminders that go out when they're past due. You can do it when before they're due. Maybe you've got some that tend to need extra reminding, so you can do that as well. If you happen to be in 2017 and you're upgrading to 2020, then you'll be able to take advantage of this feature. If you are in, say, 18 or 19 and you don't want to bump up to 2020, then there's actually two add-on products, Bill and Pay and Recur 360, that also have automatic payment reminders. I think for most of you, Bill and Pay might be a better fit, and that's actually one that I use, but I'm happy to talk to you later if you're interested in that. But in the desktop, you actually have to create the list, a name of the list, and then add your customers to that list first. And you can have more than one list. And so here's a place where you can add your customers to the list, whether you add all of them or select some. I guess it depends on the type of list this wants to be. Um, and then you can decide when does this go out. And so you can set a reminder for before or after the due date, how many days, QuickBooks will actually start an email for you, but you can obviously go in and you can reword this however you want. You can change some of the fields that you might want to put in here. So it's a nice report. If you're on QuickBooks Online, they do have reminders. I'd say theirs are definitely simpler, but you go into your account and settings under the sales where you can go ahead and set up invoice reminders. And just like the desktop, you'll have the option to kind of customize the message that goes out to your customer. If we kind of look at, from the bringing money in, right, and then you've got maybe some slow pay customers, and unfortunately, I think a lot of you probably have at least a couple that fall in that camp. I actually prefer, for collections, I actually prefer the collection center in the desktop QuickBooks. This does not exist in QuickBooks Online. And when they brought out the income tracker, they hid this. But you can turn it back on if you go into your company preferences and go to sales and customers. There's a place where you can enable the collection center. And what I like about the collection center is the way to see, who's overdue and almost due without looking at anyone else. So you can choose just one or the other. And just if you didn't know, almost due can actually be one of your preferences. You can decide what is almost due. Is that 5 days, 10? I think the default in QuickBooks is 15. So you can change that and make that work for you. But what I really like about this that makes it stand out compared to the income tracker for collections is the place to put notes. So if you have to call your customer, what did you discuss? What did they say? And then if you have to go back and call them a second or third time, there are your notes from before. So you don't have to go find their folder. You don't have to go flipping through a whole bunch of notes in the customer center and figure out which ones dealt with these invoices. It's all right here. So I find that much simpler. And also, if you've got people who maybe you don't want them, certain employees who you really don't want them to see the collection part of the business, then again, it sort of helps keep that separate. And then obviously from here, you can send emails for the invoices and comments from there as well. Um, and then another way when you're looking from a cash management standpoint would be to kind of project. You want to project, how do we think we're going to do? Going out a period of weeks, maybe months, that's up to you. And there are some different ways that you can do that, but I think a tool that many may not realize exists is there's a report called Average Days to Pay. And this is in the desktop. It's under the customers and receivable reports. The first time you run this report, it's going to default to all dates. So for some of you, it's going to be a long, slow report. But I would suggest that you shorten the time period. So whether you just do it for this year, you do it last year and this year, or maybe the last 2 years, that's entirely up to you. But this is a summary report, so it's going to list all your customers and how long, on average, does it take them to pay you. That can be a real eye-opener, number one. And you'll find when you run the report down at the very bottom, it'll actually give you an average of everyone. So when you're looking at projecting, you can kind of use that one if you want, or if you wanted to break your customers up into a couple different camps, that would be another option. The other thing I would suggest you do while you've got this report is I would export it out to Excel, and I would sort by average days to pay. I don't care if you put the slowest or the fastest up top, but it might be a real eye-opener to see who your slow pay customers are and just how slow they are in paying. And then you can decide whether or not they are worth hanging on to. But it's definitely worth kind of reviewing for you there. If we take a look at, so we looked at trying to bring the money in faster. Another way would be, at least controlling the money going out and knowing what wants to go out. So I know all of you are good about monitoring your payroll when it comes to maybe total dollars and hours worked, and especially overtime. I would also suggest that you monitor if you've got reimbursements, just kind of review those and make sure that they're legit. Maybe there's not some padding going on in there. Hopefully not. And then take advantage of accounts payable. So I hope I'm preaching to the choir here. This is one of my soapboxes, I'll admit. But usually what I hear, and I've been surprised at the size of some of the businesses that don't use this tool, is it's too complicated, it takes too much time. And I've heard that from the bookkeeper, and I just bit my tongue. So I'm here to tell you that it really actually does save you time in a couple different ways, and I'll show you in just a minute. So I think it's you should absolutely do it. And it actually makes it much easier to manage your cash flow because you can see everything in one place, and then you can make better decisions on how you want to control the money that you're going to spend and when you spend it. So once you've got your bills entered, then there's all sorts of reports. So you can run an aging report, and you can see, if you're past due and with who. You can get it by unpaid bills details. So, most of you probably have a few suppliers where you have multiple bills, but you'd be able to see that. So there's different ways that you can run these. You'll find there's additional reports to take advantage of your accounts payable. But there is also a bill tracker, just like there's an income tracker. So similar, you can pay bills from here. You can see what's overdue. You can convert. Well, most of you probably don't use purchase orders, but if you do, you can convert them to bills in here. So it's a way that you can work with it. I don't personally use this. I actually prefer this instead. And you'll find that this is in both desktop and in online. And you start with enter bills and you go to pay bills. You don't go to enter bills and write checks. Remember that for those of you that have been maybe doing that. But what I like about it is a lot of things. Is one, first off, you can choose if you want to see all your bills or not. You can filter by date range. So when I was doing the book, sometimes we would just look at 2 weeks out. And you can filter by just certain vendors if you want to take a look at, or you can look at one. You can sort by due date, by amount due. That's up to you. As you check them off, QuickBooks assumes you want to pay them in full, but you can actually decide maybe you're not for whatever reason. And so you can decide the amount that you're going to pay, and then QuickBooks totals up here for you. And then you can choose to pay by check or by credit card, and then it will give you an ending balance. So if you've ever had to play the game where we can't pay all these bills, if we need to keep X amount available for payroll, and we need to keep another X amount in order for our loan payments, you know, what can we spend? So it makes it a lot easier to play that game, because as you play this game, then this automatically changes along with you. And then you can just print a whole batch of checks at one time. So you didn't have to go into each individual one. You were able to look at a group at a time instead of one at a time. So I think this actually goes much faster for you. And in the online version, the difference would be that this part that you see down below in the desktop is actually up on top. But other than that, they work pretty much the same. There's also a company snapshot. And what I will tell you as a business owner, this is actually a tool that I personally like in my own QuickBooks. And for me, it's on my desktop, so it's a click away. There's actually 12 different screens that you can choose from to put into your snapshot. You can have all 12, or you can pick 2 or 3. That's up to you. You can also put them in whatever orders you want them in. So this is actually from one of the QuickBooks sample files, so everything's dated in the future, so no one's late. But we know realistically, if you're looking at your own file, if you have customers who owe you money, if they will show up in red. So I like that it jumps out. If you are behind on any of your bills, they will show up in red. So again, that's kind of nice to know. If you have money to deposit, you've got checks to print, you can put in your reminders here. So I like that I can see a lot of things at one time. I don't have to go run all these different reports or go here or go there. It's kind of in one place. There are multiple charts in here as well. So sometimes these images speak more to you than by seeing the actual numbers. Quick comment on the account balances that I have here. This is as of the last entry in that register. It's not necessarily as of today. So I'll give you an example. When I get my credit card statement, and then I schedule on the credit card website when I'm going to make my payment. Then I go into my QuickBooks and actually have that payment scheduled out, say maybe 3 weeks from now. So the balance that I would see in my bank account isn't as of today. It's maybe as of when I'm making that credit card payment. So just so you know, and if these are the same numbers as if you look at your list of your chart of accounts. So just so you know, these will not match necessarily what you see on your balance sheet. QuickBooks Online also has a dashboard, maybe not quite as robust as the desktop, but again, you can see what's been going on with your invoices, money in, expenses, money going out, your bank accounts. Again, you can see trends in your business. So it's, again, when you are busy, I like to have things grouped together so I don't have to be so disjointed trying to see some of the key components that I want to see in my business. Obviously, I know you've got other things you want to take a look at, but this definitely does give you a good start. There's also a tool, this is available only in the desktop version of QuickBooks. It's called the Cash Flow Projector. I will admit it takes a little bit of time to set it up to get when you get started, but it does do a nice job. So you start with, what money do you want to say that we have on hand? So what's in your bank account? Did you get any of the payroll protection plan funding? Up to you whether or not you want to use money from a savings account or a money market account if you have other bank accounts, your undeposited funds, and you can adjust the balance here. So it's like, what are we going to start with? And this is going to project 6 weeks out. Next thing is, how does your money come in? So we talked about that average days of pay. That might be really useful. So on average, how quickly do they pay? And then maybe you can put that into a weekly number. So you actually do have a choice. You can do manually, which I really usually don't recommend. You can use the last 6 weeks or an average of the last 6 weeks. If this was a normal year, I would say you could also base it on last year. Maybe for some of you it has been. But and then the weighted average says that your most recent payments of these last 6 weeks actually get a little more weight, thinking that maybe they are more typical of what you're going to be getting. So up to you. So you kind of choose how you want to project going out, and then you can actually adjust it. So maybe you've got a couple of deposits coming in from jobs that you have coming up, or maybe it's the next part of a job that's been going on. There's also then a place for you to put other expenses. And so there are some expenses that don't show in your accounts payable. And I know I have a few clients that do like to try to use their P&L for cash flow projection, which is not the intent of the P&L, but but I understand, it's like they're trying to see, what money is going out the door. So these are the ones that don't show in the bills, like your payroll liabilities, it's your loan payments, sales tax, your payroll, right? I mean, these are all major costs for you. And then you could decide there's you have weekly, biweekly, monthly, bi-monthly. There might be one other one, I forget. But you get to choose the frequency and then the amount. So I know you have a lot of loan payments. You could list each individual one if you want. Same thing with your payroll liabilities, or maybe you can come up with an average. So if we know we're going to pay these loan payments this month, how does that break out on a weekly basis maybe? I'm just giving you ideas, trying to simplify the data entry work in setting this tool up. And then again, you can make adjustments along the way here. And then here's where your bills come in. So remember I said once you've got your bills in, there's different ways that you can use those. So you get to decide when you're going to pay them. In this screen, though, you don't get to decide how much. So you'd have to make those adjustments down here. But again, it does give you something to work with. But what you get here then is it's looking at 6 weeks. Here's your beginning cash, what you projected going on a weekly basis, any adjustments. Here were your business expenses, and then your accounts payable, and then gives you your cash along the way. So different ways to do these, but it's nice in QuickBooks because it can pull from data that's already there. You didn't have to key a lot of extra stuff in there. QuickBooks Online is going to have a cash flow planner. Those of you in the online can tell me whether or not it's already active. I know the test drive, it doesn't look like it's active, but this is something that's coming if it hasn't. So I think it's got some nice potential. So you actually start with a QuickBooks cash account, and this really is a bank account, and Intuit has, I don't know who they partnered with to do that. And so that's where they want you to have at least some of the money in here in order to do some of the projections. You can set money aside. So you need X amount for payroll. You're going to be buying new equipment. You got tax payments coming up, so you can be putting money aside in different envelopes if you want. And then you can do a projected balance. This will go for 90 days out is what they're looking at. They do intend to beef this up, but I haven't heard what else. If I did, I don't remember what all they want to add to it. And they are talking about making this available in the desktop product, but I don't look for that this year, I'm sure. These are other bank accounts, but you can't move them up here. So for whatever reason in the programming, that's how it works. I apologize for the not as clear as I'd like, but I was doing a screenshot of the webinar I watched. There is another tool available that I think is very powerful. I do like it. It's called the Cash Flow Tool. It works with both online and desktop. They have a free version that will project 4 weeks out. The paid version will go 6 months out. If there's time at the end, I'll be happy to discuss this in more depth. And if we don't have time at the end, if you're interested in learning more about it, then I do have an article, and I'll also create a video that you can watch and take a look at it. So questions?
So we'll just pause for a few moments to see if we have any questions come in. If you have questions for Monica, please just write in the chat window that the question is for Monica. And if it's for LMN, just address it to Holly. Monica, I have a question from a user that is asking, is there a quick or easy way to review multiple reports or charts in QuickBooks?
There are two methods that I like. If you're in the desktop product, we'll start there. In the desktop product, you can actually create a group of reports. So there's a group that you typically like to see, monthly or weekly or quarterly. You can actually put all these groups in a memorized reports in that group, and all you have to do is run the group. And then it'll run all those reports for you and have them open, and then you can review that way. If there's other reports too that you want to see often, they can actually be on the toolbar. So my preference in the desktop is I do the top toolbar, because in my own books, I promise I've got a lot of memorized reports and they are a click away. So I can quickly get to them, my snapshots up there as well. If you're in the online version, you can actually create a section where you can have reports, but you're not going to run the group. But again, and I think that typically when you go into QuickBooks Online, you at least have the dashboard, so you see a few things that way. So not quite as robust kind of as the desktop, but there are a couple different ways that you can do that. They aren't going to run a group at a time. The other thing you can do, I guess, is you can actually create different users in your browser and then have a tab for each one. So a tab could have these reports always showing up for you if you want. That might be another way in QuickBooks Online.
Oh, awesome. And is there training resources available online that can help users build these reports?
I know that in the blogs that I've done, I definitely have discussed the group reports and putting things on the dashboard, and I do, or excuse me, on the toolbar, and I do have a video that shows how to do that as well. That's actually on YouTube. And
Oh,
then
awesome.
as far as QuickBooks Online, I'd have to see. It's been a while. I remember when I was pulling another presentation together, pulling some of the ideas together, and I don't remember who I pulled it from, but I can find out and get back to you folks.
Okay, that's great. And how do users join your newsletter or your blogs so that they're able to get that information?
When you go to my webpage over on the right, I've got a newsletter that you can get. There's a place where you can just put in your name and your email address, and then you're on my list.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will continue on. I don't have any other questions at this time. Please feel free, audience, if you have any questions, just enter them. We will have another opportunity at the end of Monica's presentation for more questions. Thank you. And Monica, please go ahead.
Okay. So now we're going to take a look at some ways that you can monitor the health of your business. And so I'm going to take a closer look at the balance sheet and some ratios that might be useful for you. And I'm hoping that most of you are familiar with your balance sheet. I do have some clients that they'll look at their P&L and they almost never look at the balance sheet. So, so for those that don't look at it very often, I just want to at least let you know what's there so that you have a better understanding. So I would say balance, when they call it a balance sheet, it's balanced, I would say, for two reasons. One, all of these accounts have a running balance. If you look at your P&L, those aren't running balances. They reset every year for you. And they start back on, if you're on a calendar year, on January 1, you're back at 0. But here, you always have a running balance. The other thing is if you look at my total assets equals my total liabilities and equity. So these two numbers are always the same. If for any reason they aren't, in the desktop, I've seen that sometimes when you run this on a cash basis, they aren't. And then there's a knowledge base article that will walk you through how to find the transaction that needs to get corrected in some way. And then if you've got it, if that happens on an accrual basis, then I think there's something going on with the data file. I've not heard that issue with QuickBooks Online. I won't say that's not, but I haven't heard of that. So maybe you're okay there, whether you run on a cash or accrual basis. But if you were going to sell your business, you would tell me that you're worth more than your bottom line of your P&L, right? And it's going to be from your current your assets. You're going to say, but I am worth, and then fill in the blank, right? So you've got these vehicles that you've got equipment, maybe you've got buildings, definitely you've got your accounts receivable maybe, and maybe some of the money in your bank account. Those are things that you own. And then your liabilities is what you owe, right? So, and a couple comments in here, if you don't know, current in accounting lingo means a year or less. So if so these are assets that you've got, they're just going to be here for the year. Current liabilities, you're going to pay them off at some point within the year, supposedly. So if we take everything you own, your assets, and subtract everything you owe, your liabilities, you're left with your net worth. Also notice that this actually pulls straight from your P&L on here when you're looking at that. But this actually can be a useful tool in giving you an idea of whether you're coming into better times or if things are getting tougher. And and I can remember when I did the books in my own company in early years and for the landscaper. There's be times where, the P&L said you had our profit, but I'll tell you what, it was really hard to pay the bills. so, so these ratios can help explain some of that. So we'll start off with the quick, and these are what I would consider your most easily available, typically within like a 90-day range. So that's going to be like what's in your bank account and your receivables. These are the things that are going to come in quickly, and then you're going to divide that by your current liabilities. So it becomes an easy math number. And then current is how quick your how excuse me, your ability to pay your debt. So this is over a longer period of time, maybe looking within the 12-month period. So these are ratios that the banks definitely take a look at. So you just take your current assets, divide by your current liabilities. So you can certainly run this at any point. Those are easy to come up with. What I will let you know is, and I see this with my larger companies and not with my smaller clients, but technically, when you look at your loan payments, they're considered long-term liabilities, except this year, you're going to be making 12 months of payments on that particular loan. So what they will do is they will pull out those 12 months and they actually move them up under their current liabilities, saying those are the ones we're going to pay this year. And they'll have a spreadsheet somewhere that's got principal and interest broken out, and that's how they move the numbers up there. So I'm not saying that you need to do that, but just realize that when you're doing these calculations, that actually does have a play, because if you don't move them, you still have these that you're actually paying in this year that can actually impact that to some extent. And then this is you're looking at your debt and what percent is financed, what percent of your business is actually financed by debt. So again, when you start to see this getting higher, then that could also be a reason of saying why you maybe are struggling to pay some of the bills, even though the P&L says that you're actually showing a profit. The profitability ratios, most of you are probably familiar with. These are the fun ones that I find a lot of people like to look at. And if we take a look at your gross profit margin, then here's the percent here. And this is just looking at this just after your direct costs, right? Here's the income, here are our job costs, here's our profit margin. Notice, of course, this does not match the profit margin that you see over in LMN. And LMN, one of the really great things is that they make sure that you are factoring in your overhead, right? So, so this is always going to be higher, or should be always higher than what you see over in LMN. But the idea being that this is going to cover your overhead. It also gives you, if you look here, then we've got our profit margin, which is obviously your bottom line here. And maybe that's closer to what you're seeing when you're looking at your LMN profit margin. But this also does give you a gauge. So when you're looking at trying to do some planning, or maybe you need to make some adjustments, whether you work off of a dollar number or whether you work off a percentage, then you at least have, that we have to hit this number or higher in order to be able to cover our overhead and still have a profit at the end of the game, which is, that's the name of the game, right? You want to have a profit when you walk away at the end of the day. And for some of you, maybe you've tapped into, you were one of the ones that were able to tap into the SBA funding. Maybe you have these already set up, but in case you don't, I will tell you from everything I hear with them, the big payments that have gone out, that they are going to have to replenish the coffers. So there's definitely going to be some audits next year. So you really want to be sure that you have good tracking in your QuickBooks for the loan money that you got. So there's different ways. There's not one right or wrong method, as long as you can document. I think that's the key thing. As long as you can document, you're good. But a couple ideas is you can actually create a bank account. And like for the payroll protection plan, that was only going to be for 8 weeks. So you really don't want a new bank account for 8 weeks, right? But you could do a sub bank account. And so that's what I did here is I set up 2 sub bank accounts. If you're going to have more than one bank account, then you can actually, in desktop, make them different colors. You have to be in the register first, but then you can click on edit and change account color, and then you've got different colors. So it makes it useful. So you know that you're in the account that you want to be, right? Another way might be to use classes, and you can do a class just for the loan, but I know for many of you, you're using, when you use classes, they're for your division. So what I did here is I made them subclasses of the different divisions, and then you can just filter, all those that are the payroll protection plan. You could run a report on that and get your numbers that way. And then for those of you that are having to track national paid leave because of the pandemic, you definitely, if you're doing payroll in QuickBooks, then Intuit actually had articles, one for desktop and one for online, where they told you what needed to be set up, who needed to be in there, and what parameters there were in terms of hours or dollars for them. I will tell you that I did hear in one of the forums is that the initial instructions were incorrect for the tax liability. I don't remember the details now, but you might want to double check that. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me later. But if you want to track and see how these are progressing, where you are in that, in the desktop, my favorite report has always been the payroll summary report because there are so many ways that I can customize that report and take a look at what I want. So I did this one so I could see by employee, what they've done. And here's another one by pay period. You could bring in hours. So I usually default to hours and dollars, and a lot of times I just wanted to see numbers. But you can work on this. So whether it's by pay period, by month, by quarter, that's entirely up to you. But it does give you a couple ways to kind of take a look at that. And I'm sure most of you, if you're in 2017, you've been getting the alerts inside your QuickBooks that they are going to discontinue support for 2017, the end of May. And a couple things to keep in mind: you won't be able to download bank transactions. You won't be able to email your invoices straight from QuickBooks. You're running payroll, that won't work. Credit card processing with Intuit won't work. So and that'll be effective June 1. So you want to do the upgrade, obviously, before the end of May. I do have a page here. If you go there, then I've got more detail as far as what all will be discontinued in terms of support and functionality of QuickBooks there. There are some promotions that are running this month. I'm also, besides being an advanced certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor, I'm also an elite QuickBooks solution provider, so I get special pricing that you can't get when you reach out to Intuit. Right now, there's two different promotions for QuickBooks Enterprise. One is the trade-in, trade-up. So the discounts are anywhere from 30 to 50%, depending on which enterprise you get. That ends, the promo ends on the 22nd. That discount is for the first year only, and then you pay full price subsequent years. Most of my clients much prefer my 20% lifetime discount there, and that you will not get from Intuit. And then we do have special pricing for those of you who need to buy QuickBooks Pro Premier. That's just for LMN customers. And I do have some, not many. I have a few clients that do the Plus products. They're running a 50% promo for the first year, but again, you go to full price subsequent years. And I do have some resources that I thought might be useful for you. So this is the URL for my blog site. You can search by keyword or by topic or month. You can scroll through any way you want. That cash flow tool that I mentioned earlier actually has a page called Help My Business. They have a really good webinar there where they talk about being able to calculate your cash burn rate. And they also show you more about how you can use their tool to kind of help you forecast out like about maybe 6 months. Mike McAllowitz actually had a good webinar and some really useful articles here on his recession response. There's a lot of PDFs that you can download. Quick comment: he's letting people know that you're going to have in the U.S. there's 3 tax payments due within 60 days. So first, second, and third quarter, right? And then there's my sunset page. You can order software. If you go to this site, they'll connect you to my team, or you can call these numbers or email me, and we'll be happy to help you either with questions that you have or with the software on there. So any questions?
Great, so we'll just pause for a few moments to see if we have any questions that come in. Thank you so much, Monica, for all the detail there. Super helpful. I always learn so much from you during these presentations.
Thank you.
Had a question about job costing. Is
Uh-huh.
there a report in LMN or QuickBooks that shows how profitable my jobs are compared to each other? So we'll start with you, Monica, and then I'll answer the LMN portion of that question.
Okay. So you can, in the desktop version of QuickBooks, you can run, there's a job profitability summary report, and that will let you take a look at all your different jobs. You can certainly put, date parameters in there if you want to narrow that down. You can also do a P&L by customer job. That's another way. And starting in 20, and that will let you see the individual jobs. You can collapse if you just want to look at the customer. And over in QuickBooks, and then I guess that's looking at all your different jobs to compare. And then you got the job profitability detail if you just need to look at one specific job. Over in QuickBooks Online, the best you could do would be to run a P&L by uh, customer, and then it'll pull out the sub-customer. Um, and if you've got jobs under there, maybe that'll break out a little bit. But that'll be the best that you'll get.
Okay, very helpful. In LMN, we have multiple different reports available in LMN estimating as well as in LMN time. For the most part, LMN prepares the information in order for you to do your job costing in QuickBooks. So we send over your estimate, your invoice, and your time in order to do your job costing in QuickBooks, whether that's online or desktop. LMN can tell you your estimated costs. We have a couple of really popular reports available within estimating. If you go to your standard or service estimates, you'll see that there is an Excel button that if you select that, you can sort a report available in Excel by status. So you're able to look at all your estimates, see your total estimated job costs as well as overhead recovered. And then in addition, in LMN time, in terms of hours, we are able to pull several different reports where you can compare your estimated versus your actual hours.
There is one other report in Enterprise for some of my clients. If you are running payroll in QuickBooks and maybe paying biweekly, not weekly, if you've got your estimate that you brought over from LMN, it will have your actual cost to date. It'll have, if you use purchase orders, it'll have what you have on purchase order. But if you have your hours in that you pulled in from LMN time and QuickBooks and you do payroll, it'll also give you the dollar amount of your unpaid wages. And then with the idea of giving you an idea of here's where you are on your total cost and what it might cost for you to finish out the job. That kind of helps you overall seeing, are you on track that way too?
Understood. I have a question for a user. I believe this is for myself. Will that estimate report ever be able to be sorted before exporting? So I believe the question here is whether we can pull some filters versus the current file, which is essentially an Excel dump of your service or standard estimates. So I can certainly take that feedback, as I believe that you're looking for filters prior to generating the report, and share it with development. The great thing about that report is that it is in Excel, so you can filter once the information is exported to Excel. And Monica, I have a question for QuickBooks. What are the
Uh-huh.
most detailed report options to track project profitability in QuickBooks?
In QuickBooks, probably the estimated versus actual detail report can be one, and then the other is the job profitability detailed report. Those are probably the two most detailed on there.
Okay,
And that's all dependent on how detailed your items are in QuickBooks because those two reports pull from the items list.
gotcha. And I have a question for LMN. A user is asking how they access the LMN Academy. They received an email about it. The LMN Academy is accessible to all users. It's free training that you can access directly within your account. From LMN Home, scroll down on the left side menu to Academy, which will take you to the Academy login page. If you're unsure of what your username or password is, just click Forgot Password to reset. And then once you're in the Academy, you'll see all the Academy online courses that we have, which will walk you through LMN. So whether you're setting up your account or you're just looking for specific training in a specific area, the Academy will walk you through. Okay. Well, thank you for your questions. We're having a look now at our forms library. Just want to highlight that within LMN, we do have a forms library that has over 700 forms and processes available for a free download. In addition to LMN and these webinars that we host periodically, we also have a user group, both Facebook and LinkedIn. If you're interested in learning how other users are navigating through our software, it's become more of a peer networking group where they talk about different uses on how to best use the system. We have software skills, so I just mentioned the LMN Academy. So we have the Academy online. We also have opportunity for you to book with your LMN rep. Every single account is assigned an LMN onboarding rep. So whether you have questions as you're navigating through the software initially with setup, or you have questions a year in or 2 years in on the best method of how to use the software. We're happy to help, whether they're quick questions or if you're looking for a demo on a specific feature. We do have LMN workshops, which are available now online. The workshops are intended for new users to the software to provide an overview. And then lastly, which you're taking part of today, is the LMN free webinars that we host on a daily basis. I just want to thank everyone for attending our webinar today, and special thank you to Monica. Monica, it's always a pleasure working and learning from you.
Thank you, Holly. You're good to work with. So
Great. Thank you all. I hope you all have a great day. Bye now.